many laws that enhance good governance and democracy. But a lot still remains to be done in evolving a legislature that is more responsive to the needs of a nation requiring rapid development. Now, as Nigeria sets for a transition from one administration to another, our attention is on how the incoming legislature will approach its task of lawmaking and oversight as a key component of democracy. My guest was a member of the House of Representatives from 2011 to 2015, where he chaired the House Committee on Internal Security. He was a member of the Third Assembly of ECOWAS Parliament and was Deputy Chairman of Trade, Customs and Free Movement of Peoples and Goods from 2011 to 2015. Between 2015 and 2019, he was Special Advisor to the Minister of Interior, and from 2016 to date, he has been the National Coordinator of Security Governance Initiative, SGI, under Defense Intelligence. Honorable Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi comes with a wealth of experience, having worked with multiple agencies on the issue of Northeast security. He has provided advice to the government and foreign partners towards bringing sustainable peace to the region. He has expertise in Islamist groups and Islamic law, with extensive networks across West Africa into the Sahara. Honorable Gebi is a key point person for U.S.-Nigeria relations, contributing to civilian and military programs in Nigeria's northeast. He's a resource person for the U.S. Center for Complex Operations and a member of the U.S. State Department's prestigious International Visitors Leadership Program. I'd like to welcome Honorable Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi to One-on-One. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Right. Well, the 9th Assembly will give way to the 10th National Assembly. Well, it's known, as we said in our introduction, that Assembly collaborated quite a lot with the executive arm of government. In fact, at some point, Nigerians felt that the 9th Assembly was more or less under the thumb of the executive. But there were advantages to the good relationships, as people would say, and that facilitated the passage of so many laws. However, the 10th National Assembly may not be in that mold. Let's start on that premise. What do you see as we come into it?
Thank you very much for having me, sir, and happy Easter. It is very fascinating to see the journey of the National Assembly, especially my own primary constituency, the House of Representatives, from the time I entered the 7th Assembly 2011 and I exited in 2015, to see the stability that started from the 7th Assembly being continued and being sustained, and to see some of the most prolific principal actors in the creation of that stability, how they have risen through the ranks to the extent that, for example, our former minority leader, the Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, who was the architect of the emergence of Tambuwal as the Speaker of the 7th Assembly, to become the Speaker himself. So it's quite fascinating. Now, the success of the 7th Assembly was predicated on the fact that it was a multi-partisan chamber. It wasn't bipartisan, it was multi-partisan. So you had CPC, with a sizable presence, our party. You had ACN, and then, of course, you had PDP, and I think we had 1 or 2 seats for APGA. So the ability for the opposition to coalesce, to come together, to defy what the then ruling party, PDP, wanted to emerge as the leadership of the National Assembly, for the opposition to come together again, to accept and trade and select the best from the stable of the PDP, it was absolutely brilliant for democracy, and that was what planted the seed of stability in the National Assembly, the House of Representatives. That was why there was never an attempt to impeach Tambuwal, because the opposition owned him, and there was that stability that has continued through now to the 10th Assembly. And it is also instructive to recall that that choice for the opposition, ACN, CPC, was authorized by our leader then, who is now the president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, and ratified by the leader of the CPC, current President Muhammadu Buhari. So it's amazing how, on the trajectory of our journey in democracy, how these things are intertwined and they are linked. So back to your question, the 10th Assembly, I would hope to see, and I'm sure we will see, 7th Assembly on steroid. This is multi-partisan. You have the LP with a sizable presence in the National Assembly. You have PDP with a sizable percentage. So the margin in terms of majority is very, very slim. So you are going to see a very robust, very interactive, very enthusiastic National Assembly. And this will be, in my opinion, one of the most closely watched national assemblies in the history of our democracy, because everyone feels they have a stake. And you have people, just like we had in CPC, who, but for CPC, would never have even become state assembly members, but they found themselves, because of the choice, the will of the people, the momentum, they found themselves in National Assembly. I'm one of those. So you are going to have people who are not really party men, or people who are not so structurally politically inclined, who are there to do what they're supposed to do, to represent the people, and they will represent them. So it's going to be amazing to see how this is going to play out. But certainly, in my opinion, this will be the assembly to watch. And also, you have people like Ibrahim, for example, now in the minority, NNPP. You have Betara, who is arguably one of the most prolific legislators Nigeria has ever produced, who arguably, again, since the 6th Assembly, has been the glue keeping the House of Representatives together, who is exceptionally capable, competent, who has built bridges across the country, who is, by definition, accepted to be an elder in the chamber. Then you have the current Deputy Speaker, also Wase, who comes with a wealth of experience. So it's exciting.
But then you would see that, as they say, the race is already on with regards to the leadership. There's bound to be some reconfiguration of how both chambers are constituted in terms of the leadership. And many watchers of the scene are beginning to be a little bit uncomfortable with the attempts as how aspirants to the leadership jostle and elbow other fellow aspirants out of the space. Would that have a bearing on the kind of legislature that we're likely to see?
Absolutely not. You see, the National Assembly, again, this National Assembly is only as old as from 1999 to date. All the other arms of government are quite stable. They're old. This is the most sustained amount of time that we've had where we've had a National Assembly. So it's 1999 to date. So the Parliament itself, as an institution, has been through a process of reorienting itself, knowing itself, understanding its capabilities, competencies within the ambits of the Constitution and its own limits. So, but in that process of self-audit and self-realization, I think there is a sense of maturity at this particular point. So, of course, it is a competition, it is a contest, but it is a very healthy contest, and it is healthy for our democracy. So you will see elbowing, jostling, and so on and so forth. But on that day, 6th of June or thereabouts, when the election is held and new leadership is appointed or elected into office, you are going to see the National Assembly move as a singularity. They are going to come in as one, focus on the task at hand, and begin to deliver from day one, because the National Assembly also understands that we are going to have, for the first time in a very long time, a purely civilian executive. Therefore, the powers of the civilian component of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999 as amended, is perhaps for the first time, if ever, going to become fully operational. So that is not lost on the National Assembly. Certainly that is not lost on my own constituency, the House of Representatives. What we hope to see is, we don't want to see a National Assembly that is working, technically speaking, hand in glove with the executive. That harmony, like you mentioned in the beginning, in the 9th Assembly, is not too good for democracy. National Assembly, House of Representatives, is supposed to be contrarian, is supposed to be agitating, it is supposed to be disruptive, as far as it is for the good of the public of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So we would like to see heads being butted, as far as the executive brings something that is not in tune with the yearnings and aspirations of the Nigerian citizens. Then we would expect to see the 10th Assembly, regardless of who is president, stand its ground and face it squarely and do what is supposed to be done for the good of the Republic.
And of course, as they settle down to business, one of the issues they would have to deal with is the matter of national security, which, well, the challenges seem intractable for so far, extending from one administration to the other. Not the least, the trouble in the Northeast, all those other issues that have arisen from that, the bandits everywhere, kidnappings here and there. Now, this is your background, and people would look up to the legislature this time to find a way to stem what's going on. It would seem as if there's a resurgence at the, at the tail end of this administration.
You are correct. But again, to start from the last point, it is not really a resurgence. The nature of the enemy understands that during the tail end of any administration, that is the point that they could make an impact, especially now that they've been degraded to the point where they are only, technically speaking, also running for survival. So they are highly itinerant and mobile. There is no consolidation anywhere because of the platforms and the capacities and competencies that the military or fighting forces have developed. So it is not something that is new. In terms of legislation, what has happened from the Goodluck administration through now is the first component of the fight against this insurgency, for example, was seen as the exclusive preserve of the executive. So it was the executive giving directives, it was the commander-in-chief giving directives to the battle commanders, the generals, and so on and so forth. So National Assembly was actually cocooned, insulated, and taken out of that decision-making processes because that was the initial stages of the war. There was no need for any consolidated legislative activities, as it were, at that particular point in time. But you could see as the trajectory began to work in our favor, eventually, slowly by slowly, in terms of procurement for the military, for example, the executive started reaching out to the National Assembly and building that capacity and understanding within the National Assembly to understand why that is needed and what it is for. So there was a lag time where National Assembly had to catch up with the executive in terms of what is to be done. And if you look at it again, the other arm of governance, the legislature, is still in the processes, is still younger than the National Assembly, because ultimately, when all this is said and done, there will be need for a robust participation of the judiciary in terms of prosecution, in terms of what needs to be done with the exits, or what is their own legal status, what is the legal framework for our DDR, and so on and so forth. So now is the perfect time, because we're in a consolidation phase in the Northeast. There's absolutely no doubt about that. This enemy has been defeated. This enemy has been decapitated. We have won the war. What remains now is winning the peace. And winning the peace requires more actions from the legislature than it does from the executive. And this is where the laws, the bills, the acts of parliament will come into place. For example, the people going back to their homes should go back to something better. If these people would go back to, even at best, to what they left behind the way it was, then we would have failed them as a people. The IDPs and, in fact, those people who were conscripted, those people who have come out, those people who have surrendered, and so on and so forth. So National Assembly needs to look to doing that immediately, making immediate pronouncement, appropriation, etc., to support not just the federal government model, but also the Borno State model, to ensure the reintegration of our people back into their communities. It is seamless. But then again, when you are integrating people who have defected, people who have surrendered, people who have been conscripted, you cannot just reintegrate them back into the communities where some of the time they did contribute to the havoc and chaos. You must incentivize their reintegration, meaning those communities, how better is their life now, their livelihood, their source of livelihood. You can't just bring back a problem that you have now, technically speaking, redirected back into that community. So to ensure seamless reintegration, the injections back into society must be incentivized at the community level. Then those who are being injected back into society also must subscribe to some type of parole program. It's not catch and release. You have to keep your eyes on them. You have to make sure the community reports back to you, and so on and so forth. So it's a very long value chain. And the only way this can be sustainable so that there is no rollback to mitigate recidivism or expulsion from societies is to ensure that there is a robust, harmonized legislation at the center and at the state level.
But that is one angle I'd like to spend a little more time on, and because not a few Nigerians are concerned about this concept of those who are repentant, those who have surrendered, and the reintegration. There are some who are still feeling the pains of the insurgency and the atrocities that were committed. And the question is, do we have the institutions that can really certify that those who claim to have repented, those who have surrendered, can be reintegrated? Do we have the institutions to certify that they really are? Because they're coming back into the society with those who you could easily say are the victims, and they're going to coexist side by side. How does it make one victim feel when he looks at someone who perpetrated this crime against him, now back in society, reintegrated and incentivized?
Good question. First, we have to segment the process. It is not one size fit all, and it is not an amnesty program. It is more or less a clemency program. And for there to be clemency, there has to be an admission of guilt, and there has to be some sort of restorative justice meted out, depending on the levels of the crime committed. There are some crimes that have been committed within the ambits of our own law. We know what the conclusion is. It is either life in prison or an eye for an eye, for example. There is no negating on those. You're absolutely correct. But in terms of the competencies that have been built, these are citizens of the Federal Republic of Nigeria who picked up arms and contributed immensely to the deterioration of our value system. They took so many lives. In fact, Northeast Nigeria, perhaps even if things stopped 100% at this particular point, may take 50 years to recover to the way it was before. But alhamdulillah, we are working in that direction, and we have a robust governance structure in Borno State, so it is providing some type of stability in terms of developmental trajectory. However, if you look at the DDR component of the federal government, Safe Corridor, for example, it is not everyone who is entitled to go into Safe Corridor. When you exit, Safe Corridor has two tracks. When you exit, you decide, the fighter, I have decided I don't want to fight anymore. I want to make peace with federal government. You are assessed before you even come out. And when you come out, you submit yourself to the scrutiny of the military, where they begin to profile you, categorize you, based on, again, participation from the community that you come from. These people are known. They are not ghosts. So at every level, the community members of your own community where you left from will come. They can validate, yes, this guy was a person who was involved in this and involved in that, but not in this, and so on and so forth. So that forms the first basis of your own profiling. Then as the military is profiling, the DSS is also profiling. Other intelligence components of the system are also profiling. So when you are adjudged to not have committed any crimes against humanity, whether local or international, then you become eligible for Safe Corridor, where in most cases, this person most likely was a conscript, was forcefully conscripted, abducted, and put into this unfortunate situation that they found themselves. I shy away from saying that that person is also a victim. What qualifies that person as a victim is if you never picked up arms to join the gangs in marauding and killing and so on and so forth. So once you are adjudged to not have committed any crimes against humanity or human laws, then you become eligible for Safe Corridor, where you are expected to spend a minimum of 6 months and a maximum of 11 months to be reoriented. Now, in Safe Corridor, every stakeholder in the government structure of Nigeria is present. The military only provide the security because, again, let us remember, it started as a covert program, depleting fighting forces from the enemy, so only fighters, commanders, mid-level commanders and top-level commanders were coming out. So it was exceptionally covert because of the nature, but it has stabilized to the point where it has become overt, and you have other stakeholders therein in Safe Corridor. So you have, for example, the camp is run by the Correctional Service, which is their own exclusive preserve from the Constitution. They know how to handle these types of people. You have everyone, including road safety. NDLA is there, immigration is there, DSS is there, everyone is there, and clerics are there, and not just clerics from just one delineation or one sect. What the system has become capable in doing is understanding the psyche of the fighters. Who are the clerics that they still revere? Who are the clerics that they understand? So the system has a crucible, a repository of such clerics who would come to begin to roll back that cultish indoctrination into this very toxic and weaponized component of Islam. And then the rollback begins. So everything is happening at the same time, which is why it takes a minimum of 6 months. And even during the time that they are in Safe Corridor, every single week they are evaluated and re-evaluated. If they are found, again, to be becoming a little bit deviant, there's a separate track for that, and you go straight into prosecution. Mental health services are there, psychosocial support systems are there, to the point where when they are judged to be on the normal curve, then the government, the system begins to allow family visits, to begin to reconcile families, to begin to see themselves. And when they finally graduate, and everyone that comes out into the Safe Corridor process signs a document which is authorized by the President Commander-in-Chief of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and ratified by the Attorney General, where they have submitted themselves to the federal government of Nigeria. They have agreed to abide by the rules and regulations of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. They agree and abide by the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Now, this is unprecedented. These are people who do not recognize the Constitution, but here they are submitting themselves. The question would be, why are they doing that? And the answer is simple. It is because of the process. And the process is called the Sulhu process. Everyone in northern Nigeria that speaks Hausa knows Sulhu means peacemaking. Sulhu means reconciliation. Sulhu means truth. Sulhu is a basket where you put so many things to try to reconcile a people. So the person who is coming out is agreeing by himself, not under any compulsion. The only component is the system reaches out and makes these offers available. If you want to come out, you come out. There is a process you must go through.
The process you've so described is comprehensive.
Yes, sir.
But again, given the way things have been run in this part of the world, there are still concerns that are the institutions we have in this country competent enough to carry out, dispassionate assessment and to walk this process that you have described properly?
Without a shadow of a doubt. Don't forget, this is not the first time Nigeria is reconciling citizens. We did it in the Civil War. No victor, no vanquished. It was unprecedented in the history of humankind. We did it successfully, even if we have our own internal issues that have not been totally reconciled.
Right, so some would say that even after all that,
exactly. Now, that's exactly the point. This is what brings us back to the legislature. The reason why issues are not comprehensively reconciled is because the legislature does not play its role, where every Nigerian is represented in the legislature, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Everyone has a voice. So if the executive comes up with these fantastic, beautiful ideas where the limits of the executive ends, the legislature should take it, rationalize it, unpack it, repackage it, and then make it an act, make it a law, so that you cannot discriminate between X and Y, so that there won't be any hate speeches, so that there would be judicial consequences for recidivism or expulsion from society, and so on and so forth. So we're at that phase of consolidation. The military and the fighting forces, the intelligence components, have won this war. What we do next is up to the legislature. The legislature must take political ownership of this problem, these solutions, domesticate them within the ambits of the law, and ensure institutionalization. The reason why we are progressing is because everything we are doing now is linked to what President Goodluck's administration started. It was President Goodluck's administration that started the negotiation to bring back the Chibok girls. They didn't come back during his term. When President Muhammadu Buhari came, saw the value in it, and continued. So it is a beautiful thing that is happening. We are proving to the world that our systems work, our democracy works, and regardless of interpersonal differences, we know what is good and we sustain that which is good. Even the military procurement started before President Muhammadu Buhari came into power. I am the last generation in this country that saw our Alpha jets, Air Force jets flying in the sky. But now a baby born yesterday knows that we have fighter planes in the sky, and the capability and competence that has been built, I think right now, confidently I can say we're one of the strongest fighting forces on the African continent. So we have degraded the insurgency, we have dismantled it. Where there's a gap now, and this is, I'm sure, where you will go to next, is organized crime. This is our problem. This is our problem. And most of the things that we even term insurgencies or terrorism, for example, even the bandits, it is organized crime. IPOB, ESN, organized crime. They are not insurgencies yet. So we need to build capabilities and competence to fight organized crime. And the Nigerian police is the constitutional authority rigged to do that.
Yeah, but arising from the insurgency, of course, you've had a number of criminally minded people who have seen that they can engage in these activities while so much attention is
somewhere else.
Correct.
Else. You're absolutely correct. But that's not exactly accurate. You have three cycles. You have insurgency, you have organized crime, then you have petty crime. The insurgency cycle is supposed to be dismantled, degraded, disrupted by the military. And our military and fighting forces have become exceptionally capable in that. They have done it over and over and over again. They dismantle it, then it becomes organized crime. So organized crime structure here, this is where you get money, you do kidnapping, smuggling, human trafficking, and so on to raise capital. And if this cycle is not disrupted to become normal, ordinary crime for the police to continue until Jesus returns, they retool, re-up because of the resources they're getting, and then it goes back into an insurgency. So that follow-through must happen. So again, talking about the parliament should see how to address this middle cycle. The police, in terms of capacity, competence, and capabilities, in my opinion, are too demoralized. And there is too little trust between the police and the citizens for them to accurately and actively face organized crime. So what you have now is the intelligence component, DSS, that is actively involved in fighting the insurgency with the military, is now having to, after degrading the first cycle, coming back to the second cycle to fight organized crime. So something has to be done about this middle cycle. If nothing is done, then we'll keep having the middle cycle going back to become the first cycle. Now, in terms of people leaving the theaters to go back to other theaters and so on and so forth, this is normal. If you look at what NDLA is doing, for example, before General Marwa took over, there was little to no visibility in terms of NDLA. But look at what is happening with NDLEA. In fact, the paradigm has even shifted to showcase what the problem is in Nigeria. We are no longer a consuming nation, we're a producing nation. Before, you would catch people, intercept them inbound. But now, with little drugs, but now you catch people outbound with massive amounts of drugs. That shows that we are now a producing nation and as well as a consuming nation. And the nexus between that, organized crime, and insurgency has been established. Where there are drugs, there are guns. Where there are guns, there is human trafficking. Where there's human trafficking, there's Yahoo. Then we're seeing the fifth component now. Where all these are connected, then you have illegal organ harvesting. But you see the synergy between custom and NDLE. It is a beautiful thing. So if we can get our agencies, for example, I would advocate the Nigerian Civil Defense Corps, which is arguably one of the most important components that we have at this point that can fill that second cycle, to boost their capacity, to integrate them, to change the law, to enable them to produce products as if they were our own National Guard. Because in a sense, that is what they are, so that the police can face their own competence of policing. But we have all the tools. What is required is legislative direction. The executive cannot do it because the executive, by definition, executes. National Assembly has to think things through and come up with competent, cohesive policies, especially the one about national integration, national identity. This National Assembly, I hope, will be the National Assembly under this current the administration that is coming in, that would define a cohesive, consensus-based national identity. Who is a Nigerian? What does it mean to be a Nigerian? What are those values that we all subscribe to? So that I cease to be that traveler, that Nigerian, who only identifies as a Nigerian when I'm leaving the country and I present my green passport. Then I'm a Nigerian. I cease to be a Nigerian on my return when I give back my green passport to the immigration officer, who chances are will look at the name and say, Gebi, from Bauchi, I'm also back from Bauchi. At that point, we revert to our ethno-religious identity. So we need to define a strong identity based on consensus, and then all this talk will dissipate. All the agitation right now is because people do not have the room to vent and people do not have the tracks to vent. So we have to face that monster of national identity. We are all Nigerians. We are all Nigerians and we all have skin in this game. These are our troops. I keep saying this. These are our soldiers fighting and dying on our behalf. These are our intelligence agents leaving their homes for months to try to get intelligence to dismantle monsters before they even become monsters. We must take ownership of our problems and our solutions.
And it's along those lines we'll speak next after this short break. So stay with us on One-on-One. We'll be back with more with our guests.
Weekend File, your Saturday delight, going to places from the obscure to the hinterland and cities, bringing you development stories and perspectives, connecting the people with government and stakeholders on critical issues of our national life.
We are live in Abuja.
It's 9 p.m. every Saturday on the network service of the NTA. Weekend File. You can't afford to miss it.
Why should we be in a difficult situation financially?
Once upon a time we were rich, but we're not a rich country anymore.
Disaster management is everybody's business.
In all these times, the organization turned to Nigeria.
We would as much want to harness the capacity that is within us so that we see how we can become self-reliant.
1 month ended and you said you are increasing warning strike by 2 months. I mean, you are incubating madness.
Even if these are officials of government who have been told to go and enforce the law, and they have gone against the law itself, they must be held accountable.
One on One, Friday, 10:30 p.m. on NTA Network. Right. Thanks for staying with us. We still have Honorable Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi still with us here on One. Just before the break, you touched on another aspect of it, which so many Nigerians were looking forward to the legislature addressing, the matter of national integration, who is a Nigerian, and the other issue that crops up all the time, indigenous peoples, who's an indigen, who's a non-indigen, who's a settler, who's a traveler, and there is no clear definition as of now.
Well, you see, the problem with, in my opinion, the political elite in Nigeria is perhaps the inability of that component of our society to simplify the constitution to a level where the layman can read those components that affect them directly and understand them without having anyone to interpret it for them. So unless we're able to do that, I give you an example. How many, if for example, Shekau, the accursed, knew and understood that Sharia, for example, is a guarantee in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, perhaps he wouldn't have been going around screaming like the madman that he was, saying, I want Sharia, I want Sharia. So we need to understand the Constitution and distill it to its simplest component, especially those components that impact on the day-to-day living and livelihoods of Nigerians. Now, if you go back to the 7th Assembly, again, let me start from there because that's the one I participated in. We expunged indigenship during our Constitution amendment. We expunged it. We ratified place of residence, and we defined what guarantees qualifies you to be a productive citizen within the place of your of domicile. So, for example, not having a criminal record and so on and so forth, that gives you the right to claim where you are. We expunged it. We debated for 13 hours. I will never forget this. 13 hours. We passed it. But then, based on the Constitution, we'd have to go to the states and get 25% concurrence at the state level. I recall Speaker Tambuwal dissolved temporarily Parliament, and we went back to our constituencies. And every single member out of the 360 held town halls to explain to their people, their constituents, what has happened, why it happened, and why it should succeed, so that at that level they'll bring pressure to bear on the state legislators. I recall my own case in Bauchi. I held it in Zaranda. And when I came to talk about the indigenship issue and whatnot, some young boy got up and said, we don't want it, and so on and so on. And I looked at him and I said, how old are you? He told me. And I said, what's your tribe? He said, Fulani. I said, so is there any people that even stand to gain in a place of domicile more than the Fulanis? Otherwise, you'll be itinerant for the rest of your life and have absolutely no state to claim as yours. But unfortunately, the governors gathered together and killed it. And therein lies the quagmire in separation of power and the rule of law and democracy. This is why you see the 8th Assembly came in under the Right Honorable Speaker, Yakubu Dogara, tried to do the same thing. And again, it didn't happen. The 10th Assembly will attempt to do the same thing, and it might not succeed. However, there is a glimmer of hope. You are beginning to have former legislators becoming governors, like my very good friend, Right Honorable Muhammad Umar Bago of Niger, a consummate lawmaker who's been in the National Assembly 3 times. We came in CPC. Now he's a governor by the grace of Allah. So we're going to begin to have a voice at the executive level in the states. And the problems in Nigeria are not in the center. The problems are at the state level. For example, one thing I would have hoped to see Malam Nasrul El-Rufai is somebody that I admire. I may not agree with his politics, but I admire his resolve and commitment and his cohesion of processes, as well as Governor Lalong of Plateau State. Kaduna State and Plateau State are almost totally segregated because of all the religious, ethnic issues that we have been having. So they are segregated to the extent where Muslim enclave, Christian enclave. So I would have hoped to see a reintegration legislation where, for example, a Governor Nasrul Rufai or Lalong of Plateau would earmark 100,000 hectares of land and call it integration, settlement, community, or city. And the process would be alternating Christian household, Muslim household, Christian household, Muslim household, a mosque, church, community center, market, schools. And to sign up to that, you have to come and sign a legal document to abide by the rules and regulations therein, love your neighbor as you love yourselves, all the Abrahamic principles. Then you get that land for free and perhaps even get a bank of industry to give you a soft loan to build it. And the CFO is kept in trust as long as you maintain good behavior. There has to be deliberate policies in the North, especially of reintegration. There must be. And with what we are seeing now, with the rise of what is happening, weaponized hate speech, intolerance between the Yoruba nation and the Igbo nation, something deliberate must be done. We can't just leave it like this, otherwise we will be overwhelmed and consumed by another type of problem. There must be deliberate policies for cohesion and integration in this country.
It's an irony, isn't it, that Nigerians celebrate Nigerians who have moved to other lands and have attained heights, especially in elective positions. Nigerians celebrate those, yet within Nigeria itself, there's a huge...
Sir, excellent point. And it's a problem of belonging and ownership. Here, there is no sense of belonging. There's very little sense of ownership. The only components of our societies that are 100% Nigerian is the military, the defense, and the security services. Where there is no ethnicity, there is no religion. The rifleman by my side might be Igbo, Christian, and will help me shoot my own that is trying to create problems. They are the only Nigerian systems that we have, but anything else, because there is no sense of ownership. And Nigeria has been blessed and cursed at the same time because of how large the country is and the population density of the country. Any problem that comes up in Nigeria is contextualized to a region. So our problems are regional problems. When Boko Haram started, it was a northern problem. In the north, it was a northeastern problem. In the northeast, it was a Borno problem. Until when this monster threatened to consume us all, better late than never, then we realized, when the bomb started going off in Abuja and threatened to go down, then we saw perhaps this is an existential threat. So that is our problem, but it is also a good thing because we're able to geolocate a problem into a specific zone. The other zones act as a shock absorber and a buffer. So we still find our way of going along as a nation. A normal problem in Nigeria, you send it to a country that is homogeneous, that sees itself as one country, that country is gone. That is our blessing. But it is a blessing only in so much as we're able to expand it, break down these artificial barriers and see ourselves as Nigerians. During the Great Saddauna's time, the North was geographic. There was no issue about it. The North was geographic. The Kanuri man, the Birom man, the Tiv man, and the Fulani man are Northerners. They are the same. The North was geographic. But now when it suits us, North is religious, North is tribal, North is ethnic. It is only on the rarest of occasions that North becomes geographic. So perhaps we should look to going back to making North geographic. If there is stability in the North because of the landmass and the population, stability will radiate outwards. Now, the Yoruba nation, one thing I've said this many, many times that I admire about the Yoruba nation is these are a people first that see themselves as Yoruba. Their identity is ethnic, not religious, not anything else. It is purely ethnic. Therefore, a Yoruba man is a Yoruba man anywhere. And it is only as a consequence of that, I have said this many times, that somebody from Oshun can become a commissioner in Lagos, somebody from Lagos can go back to Ogun and become a senator because of that identity. So perhaps we have something to learn from the Yorubas, and I hope the president-elect, once sworn in and is in power, will bring that to bear, to couch, to craft a national identity based on what they know. If you were to ask what is Nigerian food, national food, it's jollof rice. There's no doubt about it. We agree on that. And it is amazing we can agree on certain things only based on consensus. Lake rice, Gebi and Lagos agreed. It wasn't federal government. Rice produced in Lagos, sold and consumed, in Gebi, sold and consumed in Lagos, which gave rise to unprecedented wealth in Gebi. So we have more in common than we think, but we exacerbate only those things that make us different from one another. And some of the most brilliant people I know, some of the most intellectually sound people that I know anywhere in the world are Igbo people. I give you an example. Dr. Aloy Chife, one of the greatest technologists, underrated, who lives in Boston. He is up there with the best in the world, is a Nigerian. Okonjo Iweala, the world celebrates her, is a Nigerian. But the world will celebrate Okonjo Iweala. The world will not celebrate Amine J. Mohammed, a Muslim Fulani girl from the Northeast, who is number 2 in UN. Or the country may not seek to recognize Senator Binani, who is on the cusp of perhaps becoming the first female governor in the history of our country. But were she to be from another side, that recognition will be given. So we have to balance these things, and we have to call our names by ourselves, because the name we call ourselves with is what everyone else will call us by.
Right. So this leads us to the last part of this conversation. And the question arising from it all is patriotism. You started a little bit on it just before we got into the studio. And again, it has a bearing on what we asked earlier on. Who is the Nigerian? So why should a Nigerian be patriotic? And so what are those things that should guide a Nigerian to say, look, as a patriot, I'm a citizen, and that can fire patriotism?
Excellent question, sir. And I respectfully defer to your generation. My generation is the lower cusp of your generation, unfortunately, but I defer to your generation. You had a stable identity. You had a stable terrain. You had, but I'm not one to make excuses. Nigeria provides a platform for every citizen to be the best them they can be. It's up to you to take it. What Nigeria does not do is Nigeria does not force feed you. Nigeria expects your family to make you grounded enough and ready enough and prepared enough to seize this opportunity that inevitably exists and is waiting for you. I'm from a poor family. I am here by the grace of God, seated in front of you. I never thought I would sit in front of you. I've been a fan of yours for a very, very long time, speaking to you. Only because Nigeria gave me that platform, my parents gave me the training, and by the grace of Allah, I took it and I'm here. Nigeria works. But one thing that we must change, Nigerians, citizens and leaders and followership alike, is we are not subjects. We are citizens. And as such, we must have equal rights within the definition of the ground norm that we claim to follow, which is the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. It's as simple as that. So every agitation you are seeing, if you drill down and look at it, it's a migration from subjecthood to citizenhood. Now, you either allow people to migrate organically and naturally and perhaps accelerate it, just as the Yorubas have done, or if you try to scuttle it or stall it, you will have violent agitations. For example, again, I make no apologies. If you look at our civil war, for example, our civil war is ended a long time ago. That war is over. But it is unresolved. And because our civil war is so young, it's just insignificant and inconsequential in terms of global history, victims and perpetrators are still alive. When we were growing up, social studies, we saw the unfortunate pictures of Igbo children with swollen bellies. Most of those Igbo children, by the grace of God and sheer good luck, are the ones who are in the diaspora today, who are some of the most successful diaspora groups anywhere in the world. But they have no connection with governance in Nigeria. There is zero strategic communications with them. There is zero policy connecting them organically to Nigeria. So if there is any problem in Igbo land, anything, two people are fighting, if someone takes a picture and couches it and sends it abroad, one name, it is about to start again. PTSD kicks in. They remember what they went through because chances are their parents are still alive. So naturally they become defensive. So we have to break down that barrier. Some of the most competent, capable Nigerians that we will need to come back and rebuild this country, make it greater than it is, perhaps are those people. But they have to feel a sense of belonging, a sense of integration. President Muhammadu Buhari took a giant leap when he paid off all the arrears of the Biafra soldiers. But it shouldn't just stop there. There should be deliberate government policies of inclusivity. There must be. Those people who go out and succeed abroad is because my older brother, they contend with less variables. Here we are all suffering one trauma or the other, the rich and the poor, the powerful and the pauper. So perhaps if the variables are reduced here, what the youth in Nigeria are capable of producing, what our military is capable of achieving, what our businessmen, as evidenced by the billionaires that we have created, are capable of producing. The art scene in Lagos alone is an unjust and plateau state, is enough to dominate the entire world, and we have shown it. ICT, we are capable of dominating the entire world. But there must be equitable redistribution of opportunities. There must be inclusivity, which is different from inclusion. There must be inclusivity. There must be deliberate inclusion. There must be deliberate political inclusion. This, I am different, you are different, and so on. It is absolute nonsense. If there is no Nigeria, if Nigeria had failed, Nigeria is not working, my brother, nobody will want to take over a company that is dead. How many people are running, going to court, wanting to rule Nigeria? It shows that there is value. It shows that there is capability. It shows that there is something worth fighting for. Look at the National Counterterrorism Center that was recently commissioned by President Buhari. That building, and the NSA must be commended, is one of the most beautiful buildings on this planet. Certainly in Virginia, DC, in Paris, in Berlin, in London, there is nothing like it. And the reason why, again, Nigeria is dropping on the terror indices is because the world reluctantly is agreeing that there is cohesive political will. We are fighting and we are winning. But we don't see Nigeria with our own eyes. We don't want to see anything good about ourselves. We just want to take the bad that someone in US or UK or Canada or some dingy country talks about us the way they talk about us. We want to superimpose that on us. We are exceptionally capable and successful, more than we would like to agree to. But we don't want to see that. We only want to see the petty problems. And those problems are teething problems. And we cannot afford to allow them to fester much longer. We must decisively, with absolute inclusivity, cohesion of purpose, sincerity of purpose and commitment, dismantle these problems, even if the solutions are unpopular at that particular point in time. But Nigeria belongs to all of us, and we must bequeath to our children a Nigeria that is better functioning than how we found it. And it is doable. It is achievable. These differences are artificial. What a difference. What is the difference between me, Aliyu, and an Obinna or a Shagun? Absolutely none. We have intermarried. We have lived together. All these things are artificial, and these are problems that are stoked from outside. Again, this is why we need our diaspora. We need to key in our diaspora. They are our best ambassadors. If they say Nigeria is good, nobody on Capitol Hill can afford to say Nigeria is bad. We have the resources, we have the clout. But if they say Nigeria is bad, or Capitol Hill hears Nigeria is bad, and then they reach out to the first person and says, it is more terrible than you think, and the next person says even worse, then with an already biased mind, an already biased opinion, that of a colonial master, that of a slaver, of course they will superimpose that.
As we prepare to wind down, this other aspect I want to introduce might not, generally speaking, be your turf, but it also has bearing on what we've been discussing so far. We've talked about what the legislature should go out there to achieve in its work with the executive, but there's this other arm, and you mentioned it in passing, judicial consequences for some of the actions that take place. And we have a problem with that. It's lacking so much that everyone sees they can get away with
excellent point, and it is not really the fault of the judiciary. We have two problems that nobody wants to talk about in Nigeria, and it is the fault of the judiciary and the legislature. We have antiquated laws. This is why somebody will steal 600 billion. They will be convicted or to serve 30 years in jail or pay a fine of 700,000. Those laws are antiquated. And when those laws were enacted, it was inconceivable that a human being can steal that much. You could, counting, technically speaking, didn't even reach that limit. So the perception then, maybe perhaps under the Macpherson Constitution, was somebody steals somebody's goat. For example, that was the peak. So, but it was left like that, and the law translates into current contextual reality because it has not been changed, abrogated, or repealed. It remains so. So a goat is equated to 600 billion, and the law is the law, unfortunately. Just like the rights of appeal, just like how long the cases last for. These are judicial processes that are steeped in our historical context. That's the judiciary side. Then on the legislature side, we make unimplementable laws, unfortunately. So on this side, you have an unenforceable law. An unimplementable law becomes unenforceable. That's it. So you have just wasted your time. You have done the grandstanding. They have clapped for you. Your name goes down. You made this law. So perhaps, sir, I would like to see the 10th National Assembly begin to have member-named laws, bills. So, for example, the Chibok bill on out-of-school children. so that it is immortalized. And we all know what that ties to in our collective memory. Then we have to start to give recognition also, reward good behavior. And reward of good behavior here is not just about money. It's not about giving house. Imagine if National Assembly gave out congressional medals of honor for bravery, for humanitarian, for this, for that. You are immortalized. Every human animal seeks recognition, craves recognition, needs endorsement to sustain good behavior. So these are the problems: unimplementable laws, unenforceable laws. Then we have antiquated laws that must be looked into if truly we want to provide laws, consequences that are in tandem with our contextual reality in the 21st century. I know people will talk about electoral laws and so on. INEC is one of the most important, most powerful tools in the governance system, regulation system, and the systems that hold this country together. So INEC also should exercise the powers that INEC has. Now, if INEC says, instead, for example, of MFLA redesigning our money and plunging everybody into hardship, if INEC were to get the proper backing, proper buy-in from the executive and the legislature, where, for example, in the INEC Act, forgive me if I'm wrong, it is stipulated member House of Reps can spend only 10 million naira. And we have the tools to ensure that you are monitored. If you spend 1,000 naira above 10 million, you stand disqualified. You don't contest. So you have removed money politics without really bringing suffering onto the people, and so on and so forth. So those consequences, those agencies of government that have the constitutional powers to mete out those consequences should do them. We have NFIU, we have EFCC and other financial monitoring mechanisms. With the BVN, everybody knows what everybody has. So people have to, when you are appointed into a place, just as Marwa has shown, the institutions may not be strong before, so the individual gives his strength or weakness to the institution. So if you have a strong individual, the institution becomes strong. If you have a weak individual, the institution becomes weak. So National Assembly and the judiciary must ensure to curb the excesses of a reckless executive. Those institutions, those people that should head those institutions must have the buy-in and the clearance of the judiciary and the National Assembly. Then we will have independent structures that can stand on their own feet, regardless of whether a weak person or a strong person comes in. And if the institutions are strong enough, a weak person will never head those institutions. I don't think from Marwa heading NDLA will go back, or from Hamidu Ali heading Customs, we will go back. So these are the things that we should aspire to institutionalize, so that whether we're here or not, retired or dead, we would have a smile on our face, knowing fully well that we did the right thing when the opportunity presented itself.
Honorable Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi, it's been an interesting period talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
And just as are you still very optimistic that the 10th Assembly
absolutely
will be robust?
Absolutely.
These are the issues.
Absolutely. It cannot do any other thing. It is competent. It is capable. I will pray and beg the ruling parties to allow Parliament to decide for itself, for the sake of stability of the Parliament. Don't force anybody on Parliament. Show a direction and leave the Parliament to do what it does best. These are people that will elect inevitably equals, first amongst equals. They are the ones that will work with them. We do not want to go back to that period where we were changing speakers and Senate presidents willy-nilly. We want stability to be sustainable, to be sustained, and the cohesion that we have found to continue on this trajectory. And may God Almighty make it easy for Nigeria.
Honorable Aliyu Ibrahim Gebi, once again, thank you for coming on One-on-One.
Thank you, sir.
We look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm honored, sir. Thank you, sir.
And that's our program today. We thank you for watching. Next week, we'll be back with One-on-One. I'm Cyril Stover. Continue to stay safe.